The paper shredder in student services was choking when I remembered how I died. It made a wet, grinding sound behind the counter, a little machine with a clear plastic belly full of pale ribbons, and for one ridiculous second, I thought my heartbeat had been fed into it. I was standing in a queue of final-year candidates at Ashbourne Academy with a navy folder under my arm, an admit card in my hand, and the smell of rainwater rising from the coats around me. A girl behind me was complaining that her mascara had run. A boy ahead of me was muttering formulas into his sleeve. Somewhere near the windows, Lizette Arden laughed as if she had never once watched a locked examination door close in my face, while an entire class called me a liar. The laugh came first, then the memory. Then the weight of my own death returned so suddenly that I had to grip the metal rail beside the queue to keep from dropping to the floor. In my first life, this exact morning had looked harmless. Student services, paperwork, new admit cards for the National Merit Selection Examination, a correction notice taped to the glass. No alarms, no thunder, no prophecy written in blood. Just ordinary administration, which was why everyone believed Lizette when she told us the academy had issued the wrong cards. She had stood in front of the same rain-streaked windows, golden hair pinned back with a pearl clip, cheeks flushed with useful urgency, holding a stack of cards she said came from the board office itself. They printed the wrong building codes, she had said. If you use the old cards, you'll be sent to the wrong door. She had saved the brightest smile for me. Don't worry, Mira. I made sure yours was fixed too. I had thanked her. I had actually thanked her because in that life I still believed cruelty announced itself with a knife, not a laminated card with a convincing seal. 2 days later, 42 of us stood outside the east entrance of the examination hall with identical blue stamped cards, and the scanners blinked invalid in red. The west entrance had closed 10 minutes earlier. The official candidate list had already been locked. We were barred for presenting altered cards. Lizette cried first and best. By sunset, the story had become that I had copied the fake template and spread it through the class to sabotage her. By winter, she held the merit seat that should have changed my life. By spring, I was expelled, sued by parents who needed someone poorer than themselves to blame, and found at the bottom of the old library stairs after someone pushed me during the disciplinary appeal. Now the shredder coughed again, Lizette laughed again, and the admit card in my hand looked so white and clean that I wanted to crush it until the barcode screamed. Next, the clerk called, and I stepped forward before fear could teach my body old habits. The woman behind the counter was named Mrs. Vale, though no one remembered names in student services unless they had already suffered there. She wore square glasses on a chain and tapped the counter twice when candidates wasted time. In my first life, I had come to this counter begging to prove my card was not forged. Mrs. Vale had not been cruel. That was worse. She had simply pointed to a regulation printed in 12-point font and said, "The board does not accept emotional explanations after the doors close." Her voice had followed me into nightmares for years. Now she looked at my folder, then at my face and said, "Replacement sticker, correction stamp, or lost card affidavit?" I heard Lizette's voice drift from the window area, sweet and bright, telling 2 girls that her uncle had contacts at the board and not to panic about the confusing notice. The old me would have turned to listen. The new me slid my original admit card under the glass. "None of those," I said. "I want to return this card and request identity-only verification at the main gate." Mrs. Vale's pen stopped moving. The line behind me shifted. Candidates do not usually return valid cards. "I know," I said, keeping my voice soft enough that only she could hear. Regulation 14.7 says a candidate may surrender a physical card before the deadline if they believe it has been compromised, provided they submit biometric verification and sit under the central registry list. Her eyes sharpened. For the first time since I had come back, a person looked at me as if I was not an anxious student, but a locked drawer that had opened by itself. "Where did you read 14.7? She asked. "In the board handbook," I said. That was true. I had read it in my first life at 2 in the morning, 3 weeks after it was too late, while searching for the rule that could have saved me if I had known it existed. Mrs. Vale took the admit card between 2 fingers, held it up to the light, and scanned the barcode. My legal name flashed on her monitor. Mirabelle Saravas. Candidate number 11762. Hall assignment hidden behind a lock icon. Valid. Original. Untouched. My throat tightened at the sight because in my first life that number had been stolen, copied, dragged through hearings, printed in articles under the words counterfeit ring. The clerk leaned closer. You understand what this means? You will not receive a new paper admit card. You will enter through the main gate only. If you present any card afterward, it will be treated as invalid because you surrendered this one. Yes. You must not share this process. It is for compromised candidates only. I won't. And if you are late to the main gate, no secondary door will admit you. I understand. She stamped a receipt with a dull red seal, one I had never seen in my first life, and pushed it through the slot. The sound of the stamp hitting paper was small, almost ugly, and more satisfying than any scream I could have imagined. Behind me, someone whispered, "Why is Mira returning her card?" Lizette stopped laughing. I did not look back at her. That was the hardest part. Revenge, I had learned too late, was not a speech. It was the discipline of not turning around when the person who ruined you finally noticed you had moved. I tucked the red stamped receipt into my folder, signed the biometric verification tablet, pressed my thumb to the glass plate, and watched the system remove my physical card number from the active skin pool. Mrs. Vale printed a second page. Not an admit card, but a surrender confirmation with my photograph, candidate number, and a sentence that made my skin prickle. Card returned voluntarily before security lock. Identity verified by Central Registry. In my first life, the fake cards had succeeded because every copied barcode still pointed to a live physical card number until the door scan. Lizette had not needed to hack anything. She had only needed access to a printer, the leaked building code from an assistant coach, and the class's willingness to follow the girl everyone adored. But now my card number was dead before she touched it. Anything made from it would not merely be suspicious. It would be impossible. Mrs. Vale slid the confirmation to me. Keep this private. I will. I mean it, Miss Boss. Her voice dropped. We have had problems with altered cards before. People think the scanners only check the printed code. They don't. They check time, origin, surrender status, and door path. Anyone carrying a card after surrender will trigger a fraud flag. My fingers tightened around the folder. What happens to them? Usually? She glanced past me, and I knew she had seen Lizette watching from the windows. They're held at the door until the board investigator arrives. I thanked her with a voice that almost sounded like mine and stepped away from the counter. Lizette was waiting near the brochure stand, pearl clips shining under the fluorescent lights, her smile arranged with surgical care. In our class, she was called the Golden Girl because she had perfect grades, perfect manners, and a talent for making other people feel chosen when she used them. She leaned toward me, as if we were close friends. Mira, what was that about? Did they make a mistake with your card? The old script was ready in my bones. I could have accused her. I could have asked why she cared. I could have made her cautious. Instead, I gave her the first lie of my second life and made it dull enough to be believed. My photograph looks strange, I said. They told me to check later. Lizette blinked once. So quickly most people would have missed it. Strange how?
Too dark.
Maybe it won't matter. I gave a small, embarrassed shrug. I hate dealing with offices. Her smile returned. You should be careful. The board is strict this year. I know. I looked past her toward the correction notice taped to the glass. Everyone should be. By lunch, the fake rescue had already begun. It always did, because Lizette never stole in the dark when she could make people applaud the theft under bright lights. Our class gathered in the old refectory beneath portraits of Ashbourne founders who looked as if they had been disappointed since 1894. Rain ticked against the high windows. Students spread revision sheets between trays of soup and untouched bread. The National Merit Selection Examination was 3 days away, the only exam in the country that could turn a scholarship girl like me into someone whose future did not depend on charity. The top 20 candidates would receive direct placement into the Imperial Administrative College, a stipend large enough to free their families from debt, and recommendations that opened doors built to keep people like us outside. Lizette did not need it. Her father owned half the city's private clinics. Her mother chaired the Academy Donors Council. She wanted the merit seat because she collected proof that the world preferred her. I had wanted it because my grandmother's medicine cost more than our rent. That difference had made me desperate in my first life. Desperation made people easy to herd. At 12:17, Lizette stood on a chair near the refectory fireplace and clapped twice. "Everyone, I need 2 minutes." Conversation softened at once. Of course it did. When Lizette asked for attention, people gave it before deciding whether she deserved it. She held up her admit card with a worried little frown. I went to student services because the building notice looked inconsistent, and I found out something important. Some of our cards have the wrong door sequence. East Annex instead of Central Gate. The board won't announce it publicly because they don't want panic, but they're allowing batch corrections through class representatives. A boy named Corin groaned. "Are you serious?" Unfortunately, Lizette sighed as if she had personally tried to stop bureaucracy from existing. My uncle confirmed the East Side scanners were updated last night. If we go by the original cards, some of us might be delayed. 100 eyes turned toward her card. No one asked why the board would tell her uncle before telling candidates. No one asked why batch corrections would be handled by a student instead of the registry. In Ashbourne, wealth did not need logic. It only needed confidence. Lizette lifted a neat folder from her bag. "I'm making corrected sleeves. Same candidate numbers, updated door code, blue board stamp. I'll distribute them tomorrow after mock attendance. Use these instead of the old cards, and we'll all enter together." My best friend from the old life, Nara, elbowed me. "See? Lizette is actually saving us. You looked so stressed this morning for nothing." I watched Lizette's eyes skim the room and land on me. She was waiting for my fear. In the first timeline, I had asked whether student services had confirmed it in writing. The room had laughed because Lizette looked hurt, and after that she made sure everyone believed I was jealous. This time I picked up my spoon, stirred soup I had no intention of eating, and said, "That's generous of her." Nara stared at me. That's it. What else should I say? Across the room, Lizette's smile tightened. She had brought a rope and expected me to pull against it. I let it fall at her feet. The first pattern break came that evening when I did not go home. In my first life, I had returned to my aunt's apartment after school, found Lizette waiting in our kitchen with pastries from a bakery my family could never afford, and let her help me laminate the fake admit card while my aunt praised her manners. That was how she got my fingerprint smudge on the sleeve. That tiny crescent of oil near the forged stamp later became evidence that I had handled the altered batch. It sounded absurd until a lawyer said it in a hearing room with marble walls, and everyone nodded because absurdity, when spoken by authority, becomes fact. This time, when classes ended, I walked past the bus stop, past the bakery, past the main road where my aunt expected me to wait, and entered the public library 2 streets from Ashbourne. The library was warm, dusty, and nearly empty except for elderly men reading newspapers and a toddler asleep against his mother's coat. I rented a computer for 1 hour, logged into the board portal using my candidate number, and downloaded every regulation related to admit card surrender, door access, counterfeit materials, and mass candidate irregularities. Then I printed them. Not because I planned to wave them dramatically in anyone's face, but because paper survived better than memory when powerful people tried to rewrite the day. The printer spat out 48 pages. I paid with coins from the bottom of my bag. Then I made 3 copies of my surrender confirmation and sealed them in envelopes addressed to myself, Mrs. Vale, and the board's external integrity office. Outside, the rain had stopped. The pavement shone under streetlights. My phone vibrated until the screen looked angry. "Aunt Mara, where are you?" Lizette came by. "She said you're confused about the exam card."
"Come home now."
"Nara, why did you leave?" "Lizette says she can fix yours, but you need to send a photo of the old card." Class group, everyone send card pics before 9. Don't be late. Class group, Mira, you there? Class group, Mira always makes things difficult, lol. I stood under the library awning and read the messages with a strange calm. In my first life, loneliness had felt like being locked outside a warm room. Now it felt like hearing wolves scratch at a door, I had already reinforced. I typed one sentence into the group chat. Sorry, I already handed mine in at the office. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the chat exploded. What do you mean handed in? Why would you do that? Are you trying to get separate treatment? Lizette responded last, which meant she had been thinking. Mira, that might be dangerous. The corrected sleeve only works if we keep the batch consistent. I smiled at the screen. Consistent. That had always been her favorite word for obedience. My aunt was waiting at home with her arms folded, and Lizette seated at our kitchen table like a visiting saint. The pastries were there too, arranged on a white plate with gold edges we only used when people richer than us came over. My grandmother sat in her wheelchair near the window, knitting needles idle in her lap, watching me with the tired alertness of someone who had survived enough family meetings to know when affection was being used as a weapon. Aunt Mara did not wait for me to remove my shoes. Why would you return your admit card? She demanded. Do you know how humiliating it is to have Lizette come here worried about you? Lizette rose halfway from her chair. Auntie, please don't scold her. Mira must have been scared. She said scared gently, almost lovingly, and I remembered the way she had said unstable in the hearing. The board changes are confusing, Lizette continued. I can still include her in the corrected batch if she gives me the surrender receipt. I know someone who can reverse the status before the lock. That was the second trap. In my first life, she had needed my card photo. Now she needed the surrender receipt because without it she could not understand how much danger my candidate number posed. I set my bag down slowly. Mrs. Vale said surrendered cards cannot be reversed. Lizette's eyes warmed with pity. Clerks don't always know the special procedures. My aunt slapped the table. You hear that? Lizette is trying to help you. Stop acting proud. I looked at my aunt, and the old ache moved through me. In the first life, I had spent years trying to earn softness from people who treated my gratitude as rent. Aunt Mara had taken me in after my parents died, yes, but she had also reminded me every month that I ate food paid for by her patients. Lizette understood that debt. She stroked it like a leash. I'm not proud, I said. I'm following the written regulation. Written regulation? Aunt Mara scoffed. Since when did paper protect anyone? My grandmother's needles clicked once. Everyone looked at her. She had not spoken much since her stroke, but her eyes were clear. Sometimes, she said slowly, paper is the only witness poor people can afford. The kitchen went quiet. Lizette recovered first. Grandmother, of course. That's why I want Mira to have the correct document. She turned to me. Show me the receipt, and I'll check if it's safe. I opened my folder and removed a photocopy, not the original. I had blacked out the QR code and the security string at the bottom. Lizette's smile did not move, but color rose along her neck. This is incomplete. I know, I said. The complete one is filed. Filed where? With someone who answers phones during disciplinary hearings. My aunt frowned. What does that mean? It means I'm tired, I said, and walked to my room before Lizette could decide whether to look wounded or angry. For the next 2 days, the academy became a theater where everyone performed certainty for an audience of their own fear. Lizette distributed the blue stamp sleeves after morning assembly, each one tucked into a transparent cover with the Ashbourne crest printed at the top and a counterfeit board seal placed exactly where nervous students expected authority to sit. She had improved the design from the first timeline. The paper weight was heavier. The ink was closer to official navy. The door path read East Annex Priority Access Candidate Flow B, which sounded bureaucratic enough to hypnotize people. She even printed a small warning at the bottom. Candidates using outdated cards may be delayed. That sentence did more work than the seal. Fear always did. Students lined up at her desk. They thanked her, blessed her, promised they would remember what she had done when they all entered the college together. She touched each sleeve with both hands, smiling as if she were giving out medicine. When Nara brought me one, I was in the back of the classroom copying case law examples into a notebook. Take it, she whispered. Just take it even if you don't use it. The sleeve lay on my desk like a polite threat. My name was not on it. That was new. Lizette had made a generic template with blank candidate fields, probably because my surrender number would not print cleanly in her fake batch. Nara's fingers trembled. Mira, people are saying you reported the batch. Did I? I don't know. Did you? There it was. The small tragedy of ordinary betrayal. Nara did not want me harmed. She simply wanted the room to stop looking at her when she stood near me. In my first life, she had testified that I seemed obsessed with admit cards because she thought saying less would make the board suspicious of her.
It ruined me anyway.
No, I said. I returned my own card. That's all. Then why won't you explain it? Because everyone already chose the explanation they like. Nara's eyes filled, not with tears exactly, but with the shine of someone who wanted forgiveness before doing the wrong thing. Lizette says you're creating risk for the class. If your separate status triggers an audit, they might hold all of us. I looked at the counterfeit sleeve. If everyone's documents are real, an audit shouldn't scare anyone. She flinched. You sound cold. Maybe I finally got warm enough to stop begging. Nara left the sleeve on my desk. I did not touch it. At the end of class, when everyone filed out, Lizette paused beside me. You're making this ugly. I continued writing.
I'm stunned.
You know, people will forgive confusion. They won't forgive sabotage. Then don't sabotage them. Her perfume was expensive, soft, floral, almost suffocating. She leaned down until her shadow covered my page. Do you think one little clerk receipt makes you safe? My pen stopped. I looked up at her, not smiling.
No.
I think your confidence makes me safe. For the first time, Lizette forgot to look kind. The night before the exam, Ashbourne held a compulsory candidate briefing in the auditorium, and Lizette turned it into a coronation. She stood near the stage with a clipboard and a pale blue ribbon tied around her wrist, checking names as students arrived. The deputy head, Mr. Salvin, saw her managing the crowd and looked relieved. Adults loved students like Lizette because she turned unpaid labor into evidence of character. I sat near the back, 3 seats from the aisle, with my folder on my lap and my surrendered card receipt sealed in a plastic sleeve. The official board representative, a narrow woman named Dr. Ivan, explained the rules in a voice like a closed door. Candidates must enter through the door indicated on their active registry assignment. Physical admit cards are secondary to the central scan. Altered cards, unofficial sleeves, candidate-made corrections, copied seals, and batch substitutions will be treated as document irregularities. Door staff cannot override scanner results. Every sentence should have shattered the room. Instead, Lizette raised her hand. Dr. Ivan, may I clarify something? Some candidates were told at student services that outdated cards had printing errors. We've been advised to follow the corrected door path. Dr. Ivan looked over her glasses. Advised by whom? Lizette's smile did not flicker. A board contact. Name? The auditorium changed temperature. In the first life, Dr. Ivan had not attended the briefing. A junior officer had come instead, and Lizette had charmed him into vague agreement. My quiet surrender must have triggered a higher-level review. Good. Not salvation, exactly, but a crack in the script. Lizette placed one hand against her chest. I would not want to disclose a private contact publicly. Dr. Ivan said, then do not rely on them publicly. A few students laughed nervously, unsure whose side safety was on. Lizette dipped her head with perfect humility. Of course. I only want everyone to avoid confusion. Then tell everyone this, Dr. Ivan said. No student has authority to correct another candidate's admit card. The words struck the room and vanished into denial. After the briefing, people swarmed Lizette anyway. She told them the representative had to say that for liability reasons. She said the board always denied unofficial fixes in public. She said the East Door staff had the real list. She said she would lead everyone personally at 8:20, so no one was left behind. It was magnificent. In the ugliest way, watching a lie survive direct sunlight because people preferred the warmth of it. When I rose to leave, Nara caught my sleeve. Please don't separate from us tomorrow, she said. If you go alone and pass while we get delayed, everyone will think you knew. I looked at her hand on my sleeve until she let go. Nara, listen carefully. Use only what the board gave you directly. Check the portal yourself tonight. Walk to the main gate early. Do not follow student with a clipboard. Her lips parted. For 1 second, I thought she heard me. Then Lizette called her name from the aisle, and fear made her turn. You're trying to split us, Nara whispered. No, I said. I'm trying not to drown just because the class likes the girl drilling holes in the boat. I did not sleep much, but I did not spend the night shaking either. There is a strange peace that comes when you stop trying to be believed by people committed to misunderstanding you. I packed my bag with a surrendered card receipt, identification card, 2 black pens, 1 pencil, a clear water bottle, and my grandmother's old scarf folded small enough to fit in the front pocket. She had pressed it into my hand after dinner, without ceremony. For luck, she said. Then, softer, when my aunt was in the bathroom. For remembering who you belong to. I wanted to tell her everything. The stairs. The hearing. The articles. The way she had died before my appeal because stress had hollowed her body faster than illness. But rebirth does not come with permission to pour nightmares into the lap of someone you love. So I kissed her forehead and said, I'll come home with good news. At 5:30 a.m., my aunt knocked on my door and ordered me to ride with Lizette's group. Her driver is taking everyone to the east entrance, she said. You are not making a scene alone. I opened the door, already dressed. I'm walking. Walking. She stared at me as if I had announced plans to swim through glass. In this rain? The main gate opens at 7:10. I want to be early. Lizette said candidates shouldn't crowd the main gate. Lizette can crowd wherever she wants. Aunt Mara's face tightened. Do you think you're better than her? That question, in another life, would have trapped me for an hour. If I said yes, I was arrogant. If I said no, I owed Lizette obedience. This time I zipped my coat and said, I think I'm responsible for myself. She followed me to the hall, voice rising. After everything this family has done for you, you will embarrass us? I paused at the door. In the kitchen, my grandmother sat with her tea, eyes lowered, hands folded around the cup. Lizette's pastry box from 2 nights earlier still sat on the counter, empty now, gold ribbon curled like a shed skin. No, I said. I'm going to save us from being embarrassed by someone else. Then I left before my aunt could turn love into a debt ledger again. The city outside was gray and wet, the kind of morning where streetlights looked tired. As I walked toward the examination center, buses hissed past with windows fogged from the breath of students reciting facts they might never get to use. I kept to side streets, avoiding the main academy convoy. Halfway there, my phone buzzed with a class group message from Lizette. East Annex, meet point 820. Do not go main gate. Outdated scanners, there are ejecting valid cards. Stay together. I looked at the words for a long moment, then turned my phone off. The main gate of the Halcyon Examination Center did not look dramatic enough to decide lives. It was a wide glass entrance beneath a concrete overhang, guarded by 2 security officers in dark coats and a row of scanners mounted on silver stands. Candidates queued in quiet lines, documents clutched in clear folders, faces pale with early morning dread. No one shouted. No one blessed anyone. No golden girl stood on a planter with a clipboard promising salvation. The ordinary calm of the place nearly made me cry. At 7:04, I joined the identity-only line. A boy from another academy glanced at my lack of admit card and frowned, but he said nothing because his own terror occupied enough space. At 7:18, I reached the first scanner. The officer held out a hand. Admit card. Return before lock, I said, and handed him the receipt. He looked at it, then at me, then scanned the security string with a handheld device. For 1 brutal second, the screen stayed blank. My first life rose in my throat. Invalid, barred, whispers. Lizette crying into cameras. Then the device chimed green. Central registry entry. Biometric required. The officer nodded toward a glass booth. Right thumb.
Camera.
Named aloud. I pressed my thumb to the pad.
Mirabel sera vos.
The camera flashed. A printer behind the booth hummed and produced a small white wristband with my candidate number and main hall C printed in black. The officer fastened it around my wrist. No card.
No sleeve. No fake seal.
Just my body, my name, and a record Lizette could not hold. Proceed to waiting room 3. I stepped through the gate at 7:23. Inside, the center smelled of disinfectant, paper, and coffee from a vending machine somewhere down the corridor. Staff moved with clipped efficiency. A wall monitor listed candidate groups by wristband color, not printed cards. Main Hall C, check-in complete by 8:05. Doors close 8:15. I stopped beneath that monitor and let myself breathe. In my first life, while I stood outside the east entrance at 8:28 begging a scanner to accept a lie I had not made, the real door had already closed here. That had been the cruelest part. The exam was not impossible to reach. It was simply quiet. No one came to rescue candidates who chose noise over rules. At 7:41, I heard a distant burst of laughter from outside the building, carried through the glass like birds hitting a window. Lizette's convoy had arrived at the east side. The east entrance was visible from a long interior corridor that overlooked the side courtyard. I should have gone straight to the waiting room. I know that. A wiser heroine might have refused to watch, preserved her moral cleanliness, and later accepted justice in a sealed envelope. I was not that pure. I walked to the corridor window and stood behind a concrete pillar where no one outside would see me. Below, the Ashbourne class gathered under blue umbrellas near the east annex doors, clustered around Lizette as if she were a lighthouse and not the storm. She wore a cream coat, pearl clip shining, clipboard tucked under one arm. The fake sleeves flashed in dozens of hands. Nara stood near the front, chewing her lip, eyes scanning the building as if searching for a doubt she had dropped. I pressed my palm against the cold glass. Use the main gate, I thought, uselessly. Just once. Choose yourself. Lizette spoke to the east door guard with the warm authority of someone accustomed to adults bending before her. He shook his head. She showed him her card. He pointed to the scanner. She laughed lightly, as if this was all a small misunderstanding. Then she placed her blue stamp sleeve beneath the reader. The scanner blinked yellow, then red. Invalid document origin. A ripple moved through the group. Lizette's smile widened, which meant panic had touched her spine. She tried again.
Red.
The guard said something. She gestured to the students behind her. One by one, they began scanning.
Red. 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 Red.
The courtyard changed from anxious to chaotic in less than a minute. Students shouted that the cards had been corrected. Someone said Dr. Ivan confirmed it. Someone else said the main gate scanners were wrong. A girl began crying before her own scanned because she already understood. Nara stepped forward with trembling hands, placed her sleeve under the reader, and flinched when red light washed across her face. The guard lifted a radio to his mouth. That was new too. In my first life, the East Door staff had simply rejected us until the doors closed. Now, because of my surrendered card fraud flag, the system had been waiting. 2 bored investigators emerged from a side door, dark badges clipped to their coats. Dr. Ivan followed them. She looked not surprised, not angry, but tired in a way that made her more frightening. Lizette turned toward the group, and for the first time that morning, her face had no audience-ready expression waiting. It was blank.
Bora. Young.
Then she saw me through the corridor window. Only for a second. Her eyes locked on mine, and I knew she finally understood that I had not been confused at all. I went to waiting room 3 before anyone could accuse me of enjoying the view. Inside, candidates sat in rows beneath posters explaining prohibited materials, emergency exits, and the importance of silence. An invigilator checked wristbands and identification. My hands shook only when I tried to open my water bottle. A girl beside me from North Fen Academy noticed and whispered, "First time?" I almost laughed. Something like that. She offered me a mint. I took it. The sweetness grounded me more than any inspirational speech could have. At 8:07, the waiting room doors opened, and we were led into Main Hall C. The hall was enormous, rows of desks stretching beneath high lamps, each desk holding a sealed question booklet and an answer sheet with candidate numbers already printed by Central Registry. No admit cards lay on desks. No student-made sleeves could alter anything here. I found my seat in row J, desk 14, and sat down with my wristband visible. My answer sheet read Mirabellis Voss. Candidate 11762. Active status, verified. I ran one finger over the printed letters without touching the response boxes. In the first life, my name had become evidence against me. Now it was simply mine. At 8:12, the chief invigilator read the instructions. At 8:14, a muffled sound rose from somewhere beyond the hall doors, not loud enough to identify, but sharp enough for several candidates to glance up. The invigilator did not pause. At 8:15, the doors closed. At 8:30, the exam began. Here is the truth people dislike about revenge stories. Sometimes, when justice finally arrives, you still have to sit for 3 hours and solve administrative law problems while your stomach eats itself. The first question concerned procedural fairness in public licensing appeals. The second involved forged documents and reliance on apparent authority. The third asked whether a candidate who followed unofficial advice could claim legitimate expectation against an examination board. I stared at that question for 5 whole seconds, then nearly smiled. It was not a miracle. It was the kind of topic always likely on a merit exam, but the timing felt like the universe had developed a cruel little sense of humor. I wrote until my wrist ached. I wrote about the difference between sympathy and legal validity. I wrote about systems that cannot function if private reassurance overrides published rules. I wrote about how authority must be traceable, not merely believed because it arrives wearing a beautiful face. Every answer felt like a door opening from the inside. When the exam ended, no one was allowed to leave immediately. That was the first sign the East Door incident had grown teeth. Candidates remained seated while invigilators collected papers row by row. Then Dr. Ivan entered Main Hall C with 2 board officers and spoke quietly to the chief invigilator. A murmur moved through the room. The North Fen girl beside me whispered, "Something happened at East Annex." I kept my eyes on the desk. My pulse had become slow and heavy. After collection, candidates from unaffected schools were dismissed through the North Corridor. My wristband was checked twice. At the exit, a board officer looked at my name and said, "Miss Voss, please wait in interview room 2. The North Fen girl gave me a sympathetic glance, assuming I had done something wrong. I wanted to tell her sympathy was wasted on the wrong girl. Interview room 2 was small, beige, and windowless except for a narrow strip of glass in the door. Mrs. Vale sat at the table with Dr. Ivan and a man I recognized from nightmares, Mr. Holland, the board integrity investigator who had once informed me that innocence without documentation was indistinguishable from inconvenience. In this life, he had my envelope open in front of him, the one I had addressed to the External Integrity Office. "Miss Voss," he said, "you return your admit card 2 days before the examination." Yes. Why? I believed it had been compromised. By whom? There it was. The invitation to become the dramatic accuser everyone could dismiss as jealous. I folded my hands. I did not know by whom at the time. I only knew classmates were being asked to send photographs of cards to another student for unofficial corrections. Regulation 14.7 allowed me to protect my own entry. Dr. Ivan's mouth moved almost imperceptibly. Not a smile. Something sharper. Mr. Holland tapped the photocopied group chat messages I had printed. "You submitted these last night." "Yes." "You blacked out some student numbers." Students were frightened. "The organizer's messages are visible." Lizette Arden. He said the name without admiration. It sounded almost plain. "She claims she acted on information received from you." Mrs. Vale looked up. My heart did not speed. That surprised me. Perhaps there is a limit to how many times a person can hear the same blade being drawn. "She is lying," I said. I never sent her my card. I never handled the corrected sleeves. My surrendered card status made any sleeve using my candidate identity invalid before distribution. "Your logs should show that." Mr. Holland studied me for a long moment. "They do." 2 words.
No apology. No embrace.
But enough. In another room somewhere, Lizette's first wall had fallen. They kept me there for 40 minutes, not because they suspected me, I realized, but because procedure moved carefully when powerful families were involved. Mr. Holland asked where I had been after school on the day of distribution. I gave him the library receipt. Dr. Ivan asked why I had not warned the class more forcefully. That question cut deeper than I expected. I could have said they would not have listened. I could have said I was afraid. I could have said I had died once for trying to save people who preferred Lizette's lies. Instead, I said, I told several students to use only direct board documents. I cannot physically stop candidates from presenting unofficial cards. Dr. Ivan nodded, and I wondered if she heard the part one did not say. I am done setting myself on fire so others can ignore smoke. At last, Mrs. Vale slid my original surrendered card across the table inside an evidence sleeve. This will remain with the board for now. Your exam paper is valid. Your identity entry was clean. Valid.
Clean.
In my first life, those words had been treated like luxuries I could not afford. My eyes burned, and I looked down before anyone could mistake grief for weakness. When they dismissed me, the corridor outside was filled with controlled disaster. Ashbourne students sat on benches under guard, counterfeit sleeves sealed in transparent evidence bags on a rolling cart. Some cried. Some argued. Some stared at the floor as if it might offer a technicality. Nara saw me first. Her face collapsed with something more complicated than guilt. She stood, but a board officer told her to remain seated.
Mira, she said.
Not loud. Not accusing. Just my name, finally spoken like it belonged to a person and not a rumor. I stopped several feet away. Lizette sat at the end of the bench between her parents and Mr. Salvin. Her cream coat was gone, replaced by a gray emergency blanket someone must have given her when tears failed to produce rescue. Her father was speaking into a phone in a voice designed to purchase reality. Her mother looked at me with hatred so polished it almost resembled composure. Lizette herself was silent. When our eyes met, she whispered, "You planned this." The corridor quieted because beautiful girls in trouble still attract an audience. I said, "No." I opted out. The difference mattered, even if no one wanted it to. I had not made the fake cards. I had not distributed them. I had not forced anyone to ignore the briefing, the portal, the regulations, the scanners, the main gate, or the dull little voice inside them that must have wondered why an official process depended on Lizette's uncle and a student clipboard. I had only removed myself from the machinery before it crushed me again. But people who build traps hate nothing more than watching someone step around them. Lizette rose despite the officer's warning. You knew they would be barred. Her voice shook, and for once the tremor was not performance. You could have stopped it. I tried in the auditorium. You embarrassed me in the auditorium. No, I said. Dr. Ivan asked for your source. You embarrassed yourself by not having one. Her father lowered the phone. Young lady, be careful. The old me would have flinched. Rich men had always sounded like locked doors to me. I have been careful, I said. That's why my paper is valid. A few students looked away. Some looked at Lizette. That hurt her more than any insult. Her power lived in borrowed eyes. Nara started crying then, quietly, hands covering her mouth.
Mira, I'm sorry.
I thought she knew. She said if I didn't use the corrected card, I'd miss the paper. She said you were trying to get a separate advantage. I looked at her and felt two truths collide. Nara had betrayed me. Nara had also been used. In my first life, I had wasted years trying to choose only one truth because anger felt cleaner when people were either villains or victims. Rebirth had made me less interested in clean feelings. I told you not to follow a student with a clipboard, I said. She nodded like each word hit a bruise. Mr. Holland stepped into the corridor. Miss Arden, return to the interview room. Lizette's mother rose. My daughter will not be interrogated without counsel. Then counsel may join her, he said. But she will return. We have 41 candidates carrying sleeves produced from a template stored under her academy login, a printer access record from the donor office, and a forged board contact line registered to a prepaid device purchased yesterday near her residence. Lizette's face changed. Until that moment, She had believed charm could still rearrange evidence. The prepaid phone made the lie physical. It gave it a shop, a time, a receipt, a camera angle. For the first time in either life, she looked at the world and found it unwilling to soften for her. News moved faster than official letters. By the time I reached home, Ashbourne parents had already filled the class chat with panic, blame, threats, and sudden devotion to due process. The story fractured into versions before sunset. In one, Lizette was a selfless representative misled by an unnamed clerk. In another, the board had changed scanner rules without notice. In my aunt's favorite version, I had selfishly saved myself while allowing innocent classmates to suffer. She threw that one at me before I had even taken off my coat. "How could you walk into that exam knowing everyone else was outside?" she demanded. "How could you come home proud?" I was not proud. That was the strange part. I was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that settles behind the bones after survival, not during it. My grandmother sat near the window with the radio off, my scarf folded neatly on her lap. She looked at my wristband, still fastened around my arm, and her eyes filled. "You sat?" she asked. "Yes." "Your paper counts?" "Yes." Her hands trembled as she reached for mine. Aunt Mara made a sharp noise. "That is not the point." My grandmother did not look at her. "It is exactly the point." The room held its breath. My aunt's face reddened. "Lizette's mother called me. They may sue. They say Mira created suspicion by returning her card. They say the board only looked into the batch because of her." "Good," my grandmother said. One word, soft as dust, heavy as a verdict. Aunt Mara stared. "Good. If a thief is caught because the door had a lock, do you blame the lock?" I had never loved her more fiercely than I did in that moment. My aunt turned on me again because anger needed somewhere easier to land. "You should have told me the full truth. Would you have believed me?" Silence. Not long, but long enough. "You listen when Lizette speaks because her family makes you feel important," I said. "You treat my caution like disobedience because my fear is inconvenient. I did not tell you because last time, I stopped. Last time was a country with no passport." My aunt narrowed her eyes. "Last time what?" I swallowed. "Because I knew you would hand my words to her and call it helping." That struck. She looked away first. The victory felt terrible. Not all justice tastes sweet. Some of it tastes like finally naming the wound and realizing the person who made it may never understand the shape. 3 days passed before the preliminary ruling came. Those 3 days were uglier than the exam itself. Ashbourne suspended regular classes for the candidate cohort. Parents gathered outside the gates holding umbrellas and legal folders. News vans appeared because nothing attracted cameras like gifted students barred from a national examination and a donor's daughter named in a fraud inquiry. Lizette did not attend school, but her absence filled every room. People who had worshipped her now analyzed every smile she had ever given them. Some insisted she must have been framed because she was too smart to leave printer logs. Others said intelligence was exactly why she thought she could survive them. Nara sent me 14 messages and deleted 9. I answered none. Not because I hated her, but because apology before consequence often tries to rent forgiveness cheaply. On the second day, Mr. Salvin called me into his office. He looked older than he had during the briefing, tie loose, donor plaques shining on the wall behind him. "Mirabelle," he began, using the full name adults chose when preparing to sound compassionate, "the Academy recognizes that you followed a legitimate process. However, several families feel there was a breakdown in peer communication." I sat across from him, hands folded over my folder. Peer communication did not forge board seals. He winced. "No one is suggesting you forged anything." "Then what are they suggesting?"
He sighed.
"That if you suspected widespread misunderstanding, a stronger warning may have prevented harm." There it was again. The demand that the person who escaped the fire explain why she had not carried everyone out while they mocked the smoke alarm. I opened my folder and placed 3 pages on his desk. The group chat where I wrote that I had handed in my card, the briefing transcript where Dr. Ivan said no student could correct cards, and my message to Nara telling her to check the portal and use direct board documents. How strong does a warning need to be before adults stop calling disobedience misunderstanding? Mr. Salvin stared at the pages. You kept records. Yes.
Why?
I thought of the old library stairs, the sudden hand between my shoulders, the flash of marble, the taste of blood and dust. Because people become very creative when blame needs somewhere to live. His face paled slightly. Perhaps he heard something in my voice that did not belong to a 17-year-old girl. He slid the pages back. You should go home and rest. Will the Academy issue a statement confirming I used the approved process? That may be premature. I stood. Then my lawyer will ask why. I did not have a lawyer. Not yet. But Mr. Salvin did not know that, and confidence I had learned from Lizette could move adults before proof arrived. The preliminary ruling arrived Friday at 4:02 p.m., while rain hammered the classroom windows so hard the whole building seemed underwater. We had been placed in supervised study, though no one studied. Phones were banned, but rumors leaked through smartwatches, bathroom whispers, and the administrative assistant who could never resist dramatic photocopying. Mrs. Vale herself brought the sealed notice to our room. That was how I knew it mattered. She handed one copy to the supervising teacher, one to Mr. Salvin, and one to me. You are named as an unaffected candidate, she said quietly. Around us, 30 students inhaled. I opened the notice with fingers that remembered too much. The board had ruled that all candidates who presented unofficial blue stamp sleeves at East Annex were barred from the examination sitting pending individual review. Their original cards had not been invalid, but by presenting altered documents after explicit briefing instructions, they triggered the irregular document clause. Candidates who could prove coercion might reapply the following year, but could not sit a replacement paper for the current merit cycle. Lizette Arden was suspended from all board-administered examinations for 5 years, pending final fraud proceedings. Her Academy Leadership Commendation was revoked. Her family's donor office access was suspended. The board referred the counterfeit batch, prepaid contact line, and printer logs to civil authorities. My name appeared in the final paragraph. Candidate Mirabelle Sarah Voss surrendered her physical admit card under Regulation 14.7 before security lock, entered through central identity verification, and is not implicated in the counterfeit batch. I read that sentence 3 times. Not implicated. It lacked poetry, but after a life destroyed by implication, it sounded almost holy. Someone behind me made a strangled sound.
Nara.
Across the room, Corin cursed under his breath. Another girl shouted that it was unfair because everyone trusted Lizette. Mrs. Vale looked at her with the weary precision of someone who had watched students learn the wrong lesson many times. Trust is not a document, she said. It does not open examination doors. No one replied. Then the classroom door opened, and Lizette walked in with her parents, Mr. Salvin behind them looking as if he had tried and failed to prevent the scene. Her eyes were swollen, but her chin remained lifted. The room froze around her. She held a copy of the notice in one hand. I want to speak to Mira, she said. Mr. Salvin said that was not appropriate. Her father said his daughter had a right to confront false narratives. Her mother said the Academy owed their family privacy after years of support. Mrs. Vale said nothing, which somehow made everyone more nervous. I could have refused. Maybe I should have. But some conversations are not for changing the other person. They are for letting the room hear the lie run out of air. I nodded once. Lizette crossed the classroom slowly. In another life, this would have been the moment she performed heartbreak so beautifully that everyone forgot she was holding the knife.
But the room had changed.
Students watched her not with devotion but with hunger, needing her to explain why their futures now had a missing year. That kind of attention does not worship. It consumes. She stopped by my desk. You think you won. Her voice was low, meant for me, but silence carried it. No, don't lie. You wanted this. I looked at the notice in her hand. I wanted my paper to count. You wanted me ruined. Lizette, you made 41 fake admit cards. Her lips trembled. I was trying to protect the cohort. A laugh broke from someone near the windows, sharp and disbelieving. Lizette flinched. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Protect us from what?
I asked.
The official cards that worked? The main gate that opened? The board representative who told us not to use student corrections. Her face hardened. You don't understand pressure. Everyone expected me to know what to do. That was the closest she came to truth. Expectations can become a cage, yes, but she had decorated hers with other people's futures. No, I said. Everyone expected you to be special. You decided that meant rules were for other people. Her mother stepped forward. Enough. My grandmother's words rose in me. Paper is the only witness poor people can afford. I opened my folder and removed the copy of Lizette's group message telling everyone not to go to the main gate. I placed it on the desk between us. You told them to ignore the official entrance. Then the fake contact screenshot. You invented a board source. Then the blacked-out receipt request. You tried to get my surrender code. Then the auditorium transcript. You were warned in front of everyone. Lizette stared at the pages as if they had betrayed her by existing. You collected all that?
No, I said.
You created all that. I kept it. Her father tried to take the pages. Mrs. Vale stepped between us. So quickly, he stopped with his hand still extended. Evidence submitted to the board should not be handled, she said. Her tone was polite enough to be dangerous. Lizette's mother turned pale, with fury. This school is allowing a scholarship student to slander our daughter. A year ago, that sentence would have crushed the room into agreement. Scholarship student. The phrase was designed to remind everyone that I was admitted by grace, not belonging. This time, it landed differently. The Bard students stared at the Arden family with faces stripped of glamour. Their year was gone. Their parents were outside. Their trust had been converted into evidence bags. Money could insult me, but it could not unbar them. Nara stood suddenly, chair scraping. Did you know? She asked Lizette. Her voice broke. When you told me Mira was trying to separate from us, did you know the main gate was real? Lizette closed her eyes for half a second. Too long. The room understood before she answered. I thought the east entrance would work. That's not what I asked. Nara's hands curled into fists. Did you know the board never authorized the sleeves? Lizette looked at her, and there was a flash of contempt so quick I might have missed it in my first life, because I was always busy searching for kindness. You all begged me to fix it, she snapped. You were panicking. You wanted me to handle everything. Now you act innocent because it failed. The room exploded. Not with chaos exactly, but with the sound of admiration dying all at once. Students shouted that she had lied, that she had promised her uncle confirmed it, that she had said Mira was dangerous, that she had collected their card photos, that she had made them feel stupid for checking the portal. Mr. Salvin called for order. Mrs. Vale lifted the board notice and said, anyone who wishes to submit a statement may do so through the official review channel. Shouting will not alter today's ruling. Lizette's father grabbed his daughter's arm. We are leaving. But Lizette looked at me one last time, and the hatred there was almost a relief. No more honey. No more wounded innocence. No more sisterly concern. Just the truth, ugly and direct. This is not over, she whispered. I believed her. People like Lizette rarely vanish because one door closes. They look for windows, servants' entrances, loose hinges. But I was no longer the girl standing outside with a fake card and shaking hands. I know, I said. That's why I kept copies. The appeal hearing was held the following Monday in the old governor's room, a place designed to make teenagers feel small and donors feel historic. The walls were lined with dark wood panels and portraits of men who had probably never waited in a scholarship queue in their lives. Outside the door, parents whispered into phones, students clutched statements, and 2 security officers stood beside a trolley of evidence bags containing the blue sleeves. I had not been required to attend, but Mr. Holland asked whether I would give a clarifying statement about my surrendered card, and I agreed for one reason only. I knew Lizette would try to build a final bridge out of my silence. She arrived 10 minutes late in a white blouse and navy skirt, dressed not like a disgraced candidate, but like the heroine of a documentary about misunderstood excellence. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, no pro clip, which meant someone had advised her to look humbled. Nara sat 3 chairs away from me, pale and rigid, her mother holding one of her hands. When Lizette entered, Nara did not look up. That was the first punishment no board could issue, the loss of the automatic glance. Mr. Hullen opened the session by explaining that the hearing was not to determine whether counterfeit sleeves existed.
They did.
It was not to determine whether the East Annex scanners malfunctioned. They did not. It was not to decide whether the barred candidates were disappointed, frightened, or misled. They were. The only question was whether any candidate had grounds to be separated from the irregular batch or whether responsibility for the batch extended beyond Lizette. Her lawyer, a smooth man with a silver watch, rose immediately and said the language of responsibility had been prejudicial from the start. Miss Arden was a student attempting to coordinate her peers after receiving conflicting information, he said. She had no malicious intent. She relied on documents circulating in the cohort, including a surrender notice from Miss Voss, which suggested that official cards were defective. There it was, dressed more elegantly than I expected, but still the same lie. Make my caution look like the original infection. The panel turned toward me. My pulse tapped once against my throat, then settled. In my first life, hearings had felt like rooms where language belonged to everyone except me. This time, I had brought paper and patience. Mr. Holland asked me to explain, and I did it without drama. I said I had surrendered my physical card because classmates were requesting card photographs for unofficial correction. I said the regulation did not imply defects in the official cards but provided a protection for candidates who feared compromise. I said I did not distribute my surrender notice, did not authorize use of my candidate number, and did not tell anyone that the East Annex sleeves were valid. Then I placed my phone records, library print receipt, and blacked-out photocopy on the table. The only copy Miss Arden saw had no code, no barcode, and no door path, I said. If she claims she relied on it to create a batch correction, she is admitting she invented the missing information. The Silver Watch lawyer stopped writing. Lizette looked at me as if I had slapped her, but I had not raised my voice. That was the beauty of a trap made from facts. It did not need anger to close. The hearing did not end there. Adults like complete circles, and Lizette had always been skilled at drawing them around other people's necks. Her lawyer called 3 students who said they believed I had been acting strangely before the exam. One remembered me printing regulations. Another remembered me refusing the corrected sleeve. A third said I had warned Nara not to follow a student with a clipboard, which the lawyer tried to twist into proof that I knew the group would fail. Miss Voss had superior knowledge, he said. She allowed her classmates to proceed toward harm. Dr. Ivan, seated at the end of the table, finally removed her glasses. The room quieted before she spoke. Superior knowledge is not the same as exclusive knowledge. Every candidate was given the same official briefing. Every candidate had portal access. Every candidate was told that no student could correct an admit card. Miss Voss acted on information available to all. Others chose not to. I could have kissed her shoes. Instead, I sat very still. Lizette's lawyer tried one more angle, emotional coercion. He argued that Lizette had been pressured by peers to solve an administrative confusion and had panicked. That was when Nara stood, though no one had called her yet. Her mother tried to pull her back, but Nara gently removed her hand. She didn't panic, Nara said. Her voice was thin, but it carried. She told us Mira wanted to pass alone. She said if we checked the portal, the board would flag us as inconsistent. She told me to collect photos from anyone who hesitated and said she would remember who was loyal after the merit placements. Lizette's face emptied. Not of guilt, of calculation. She had not expected Nara to choose public shame over private comfort. Mr. Holland asked whether Nara had evidence. Nara unlocked her phone and handed it over. Voice messages, she said. I deleted them, but my phone backed them up. My brother found them. The hearing room changed in a way I can still feel when I remember it, like air rushing out before a storm breaks. The files played through a tinny speaker. Lizette's voice filled the governor's room, light and intimate and unmistakable. Don't let Mira scare you. She always acts like rules make her special. Send me the cards before 9, and I'll make sure the right people know who helped. Another message. If anyone refuses the sleeve, note their name. We need a unified batch, or the board may think we altered things separately. Another. Nara, sweetheart, you know how this works. People who stand with me get protected. People who make problems get remembered. The last word hung over the table like smoke. Remembered. I almost laughed because she was right. I would remember. So would everyone else. After the voice messages, the appeal hearing stopped being a debate and became an inventory. Printer logs.
Login timestamps.
Camera footage from the donor office corridor. Purchase records for transparent sleeves. Metadata from the fake contact screenshot. The prepaid phone traced to a kiosk near the Arden residence. The false blue stamp built from an image taken from an old board announcement and sharpened in a design app. Each item was small. Together they made a wall no family donation could climb. Lizette's mother cried then, but not like a woman grieving harm done to others. She cried like someone watching a portrait fall from a gallery wall. Her father stopped making calls. The lawyer requested a pause. Mr. Holland granted 10 minutes. During the break, I stepped into the corridor for water, and Lizette followed before anyone stopped her. For a moment, it was just us beside a trophy cabinet full of silver cups won by students whose names no one spoke anymore. She stood close enough that I could see the foundation cracked near her jaw. You turned Nara against me, she said.
No, irraplia.
Your voice messages did. You think they care about you? Her eyes glittered. They don't. They're using you because I'm inconvenient now. The moment you become inconvenient, they'll drop you too. She meant it as poison, but poison only works when it enters a wound. I already knew institutions were not friends. I knew rules could protect and punish depending on whose hand held them. I knew Nara's apology did not rebuild trust, Mrs. Vale's stamp did not become affection, and Dr. Ivan's fairness did not mean the world was kind. Maybe, I said. But that still does not make you innocent. Lizette's mouth tightened. I was supposed to leave this place. I was supposed to be more than my mother's charity events and my father's clinics. Everyone looked at me like I had already become something, and I had to keep becoming it. For one strange second, I saw the cage around her, gilded and narrow. Then I remembered the east door rain, the red scanner light on Nara's face, the article with my photograph under fraud suspect, and sympathy found its boundary. You could have sat the exam honestly, I said. You probably would have ranked high. Her laugh was raw. High is not enough when everyone expects first. Then you should have disappointed them instead of destroying us. She looked away. That sentence reached her. Not changed her, perhaps, but reached the part of her still young enough to know there had been a choice before the lie became a machine. The door opened behind us, and Mrs. Vale called us back inside. Lizette straightened, wiping her face clean with 2 fingers. By the time she returned to her seat, the humble daughter was back in place. But the room had heard her voice. The performance no longer had a stage. The final merit results were released 2 weeks later on a morning, so bright it felt indecent. Sunlight poured through Ashbourne's front hall, turning the marble floor gold, as if the building wanted to pretend it had not spent the month hosting lawyers and crying parents. The barred candidates were absent, placed on independent review schedules. Lizette had withdrawn for health reasons, according to the Academy announcement, though everyone knew the board suspension made withdrawal cosmetic. Nara returned to class with swollen eyes and a silence around her that no one crossed. She had submitted a statement admitting Lizette pressured her to collect card photographs from hesitant students. It did not save her merit cycle, but it may have saved her from a longer ban. Sometimes accountability is not redemption. Sometimes it is just the first honest thing a person does after causing harm. I stood near the results board with my grandmother's scarf in my bag and my hands tucked into my coat pockets. Mrs. Vale had told candidates that scores would also appear on the portal, but students still gathered around the printed list because humans like to watch fate become physical. Mr. Salvin pinned the pages beneath the glass. For 1 second, I could not make my eyes focus. Then I found my name. Rank 3.
Mirabelle Seravos.
Awarded merit seat. Full stipend. Direct placement. Validated examination score. My knees weakened so suddenly I had to grip the edge of the notice board. Not first. Not impossibly perfect. Not the kind of result storytellers give heroines when they want revenge to sparkle. Third,
Real.
earned under fluorescent lights with a wristband on my arm and fear still sitting in my chest. It was enough to change everything. It was enough to buy my grandmother's medicine, enough to leave my aunt's apartment, enough to build a life where no golden girl could stand between me and a door with my name on the list. Nara approached slowly. "Congratulations," she said. The word looked painful in her mouth. "Thank you." She twisted her sleeve. "I know sorry doesn't fix it." "It doesn't." She nodded, eyes wet. "I'm still sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. In my first life, I had needed her apology, like oxygen. In this one, I found I could breathe without it. "Then be different next time someone asks you to trade your judgment for belonging," I said. She flinched, then nodded again. That was all.
No imbras.
No instant friendship restored for the comfort of an audience. Some endings deserve honesty more than sweetness. My aunt did not come to the small merit reception. She said she had a headache, which meant pride had lodged somewhere she could not swallow. My grandmother came in her wheelchair wearing her best blue shawl, and when the Academy photographer asked us to smile, she gripped my hand so tightly my fingers hurt. "Your parents would have been loud today," she whispered. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again because grief is rarely polite enough to choose one face. Mr. Salvin gave a speech about resilience and institutional integrity that carefully avoided naming donors, counterfeit sleeves, or the fact that his own office had let a student run candidate logistics because she looked useful in photographs. Dr. Ivan attended in the back of the hall, accepted tea, and left before anyone could thank her publicly. Mrs. Vale handed me a sealed envelope as I passed the refreshment table. Inside was my surrendered card receipt, returned from evidence, stamped case closed unaffected candidate. No note.
No wotems.
Just paper. I loved it. Near the end of the reception, Lizette's mother appeared at the doorway. She wore black, not mourning exactly, but something close enough to accuse the world of cruelty. The conversations around us thinned. She did not approach me. She approached Mr. Salvin, handed him a letter, and left. By evening, the rumor spread. The Arden family had withdrawn its annual donation and threatened legal action against the board, the Academy, and several media outlets. By the next week, the board released the full integrity summary with names redacted except for disciplinary categories. It described the counterfeit card batch, the fake contact line, the printer access logs, the candidate surrender flag that exposed the template, and the official warning ignored at briefing. People online argued for 3 days. Some said the barred students were victims. Some said they deserved consequences. Some said Lizette was a monster. Some said she was a child crushed by expectations. I read none of it after the first hour. Public opinion is a hallway full of doors that lead nowhere. The only door I cared about was the one at the administrative college, and when I arrived there a month later, my entry badge scanned green on the first try. Years later, people would ask why I did not expose Lizette earlier, why I did not stand on a cafeteria table and shout the truth until everyone listened, why I let the class walk toward East Annex with fake cards in their hands. They wanted the answer to be clean because clean answers make other people's failures feel avoidable. The truth was harder. I had warned them enough to give them a choice, but not enough to sacrifice myself when they chose wrong. I had learned, through death and disgrace and the heavy silence of locked doors, that saving people who are determined to follow a lie can become another way of letting the liar control your life. Lizette did not ruin the class alone. She needed their fear of missing out, their worship of confidence, their laziness about checking official sources, their willingness to treat my caution as bitterness because I was easier to doubt than the girl with pearls in her hair. That did not make their punishment joyful. It made it earned. As for me, I kept the returned receipt in the inside cover of my first administrative college notebook. Not because I needed proof anymore, but because some objects teach the hand what the mind forgets. A card can be stolen. A seal can be forged. A crowd can be led to the wrong door by a pretty voice with a clipboard. But a name, verified quietly before the lock, can survive the noise outside. On the first day of college, when new candidates crowded the registry hall, and a smiling senior student offered to fix a confusing form for anyone too nervous to ask the office. I watched a few first years step toward her with grateful faces. My chest tightened. For a moment, I saw East Annex again, blue sleeves flashing in the rain. Then I walked to the nearest notice board, took down the official procedure sheet, and pinned a copy beside the seniors' sign-up list. I did not give a speech. I did not accuse. I simply pointed to the registry window and said, "Ask them directly. Anything real can survive being checked." Some students listened. Some rolled their eyes. That was their choice. Mine was made long before, in student services, while a shredder coughed up paper ghosts behind the counter, and the girl who ruined my first life waited for me to hand her my future. This time I handed my admit card back instead.